Hello.
Hi.
There we go. Yeah, now I have to let people in somehow, which is
Yeah, it's weird sometimes. I don't know how it works exactly.
me either. I'm like, I invited the person. I would like them to be in. Just let them in, please.
Yeah, I think it
Yay.
depends on which email and then yeah.
How are you?
Good, and yourself?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I've been through some
Okay.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I uh I smashed my leg really bad like 2 months ago.
Okay.
So I'm like learning how to walk again, which is way harder than I thought it was going to be and like way more painful. So now I do my work from the bed. I'm in the bed. So there's that. But I got my cast off last week. So it's exciting. There's like forward momentum finally. I'm making
Nice.
progress. Dude, it fucking hurts so bad. And I pain medicine makes me like really sick and tired, so I just don't take it, and so then it
Mhm.
hurts for sure, but at least I'm awake and alive. All right, we're gonna get this going, so we just don't keep the fans waiting. Wait, one more thing. There's so many things going on my, there we go. And let me make this bigger. What does that look like? Yep, almost there. Okay. It's still like a little bit off. It's okay, I'll fix it while we go, I think. Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live Q&A. I am with the one and only, the man that is Fedor Holz. Fedor, how are you, my dear?
Hi. I'm pretty good actually. I've just been outside, so feels good.
Ugh, I feel like we have a fully new appreciation for just being outside and all the little things, although I think that's something you've probably appreciated for a long time.
More, I never cherished my terrace as much as I did the last 2 months.
I'm telling you, like just going to the park is like the highlight of my day now, and I hope I can continue to carry that with me for a long time into the future. Now, Fedor, the last time we spoke, I want to say, was this summer, and you were really involved in building, I want to say, like a collective of sorts. It was, you know, you were sort of talking about bringing together all sorts of brilliant minds and artistic people, science type people, just bringing together a collective of people to sort of build a community. And I thought it was a wonderfully idealistic but also needed concept. So where are we at on that project at this point?
Um, my life changed a lot actually 2 months ago, roughly, with Corona. So I was about to sign a lease, actually a pretty long one, and for a pretty big place here, and I haven't yet. So right now this is basically on hold. So the main thing about it was I was looking for a location where we can host it and obviously bring all the people together. And we were about to launch a restaurant in there as well and host a lot of events. And so yeah, right now everything regarding that project is just on hold.
How lucky though, huh? That you didn't get
Yeah,
yourself
both.
committed.
It's kind of both. On the one side, I think obviously lucky that I could not sign, and on the other hand, I'm kind of wishing I signed and then would have to figure it out somehow, because now obviously it's everything is kind of slowing down and postponing and looking for other opportunities. And yeah, sometimes I've in the past I've made the experience that I get creative when I'm in it, when I'm committed, then I have to find solutions to make it happen. And I think I would have found solutions here too, but we're going to look for other opportunities now.
So that is something, obviously you're always involved in tons of projects. You've got your hands in lots of things. And the other thing that we were talking about a few months ago, which has actually launched now, is Poker Code, which, for those who don't know, can you just kind of bring the PokerNews fam and audience up to speed with what Poker Code is?
Sure. So Poker Code started with the idea that I've been asked oftentimes the question of if I could teach people, or what I would suggest to learn from. And there are a couple sources and people out there that I think create great content, but I really wanted to have or like share what I've learned, share my experience. And I've been thinking about doing something like that for over 3 years already, because I've coached a lot of players and I wanted to pass on my knowledge or what I know. And that was the starting point when I talked to Matthias, and he has such a synergetic, nice fitting mindset to how I think, because we think very different, but yet are both pretty good. And I think that's such I really enjoy that when I meet other people and they're really good at the game and they think so different and they have a different approach, and he's more rational and more mathematic about the approach, and I'm more intuitive and a bit more fluid, I would say. And I think I'm probably a bit better than to adapt in some situations, maybe also play exploitatively. And I think he's really good at the fundamentals of the game and the learning process, a really hard worker. And when I talked to him, it became really clear to me that I want to launch a course with him and share both our knowledge combined, to give other people access to that. And that's the Poker Code. And we launched it so we produced that course. We put actually like hundreds of hours into it, produced it professionally with like 10, 15 people involved. It was a lot of work actually. And then we had the course and this platform. We wanted to make it kind of like a Netflix experience, so that you can go on there, you have different lectures in shorter lengths, and you can go through one, and they're all separated in different channels. So you have pre-flop and post-flop and advanced topics, and there was that's the platform and the course itself. And then we realized in that process, like, hey, we can we observed how people used it, and got like listened to the feedback and listened to the people and asked them questions. And then we realized, like, hey, we want to actually engage more with them. We want to guide them, support them on their journey. And we started building a stronger personal relationship with the people. And then this developed into a pretty strong community now, which is really fun. So we do roughly once a week now, we do coachings with all the community, and basically the best players in the game, like doing hand history reviews and sharing their experience, and you can post hands and discuss anything basically. And yeah, so that's been going well, and it's a lot of fun. And now we launched our own poker skin, basically, or poker site, in collaboration with GG last Sunday. And so now we branched out.
Wow. Okay. So
it's a lot of information to process.
No, but I think, of course, obviously the best thing that you can be doing, when building a coaching site or when doing everything, is looking at the data, right? Looking at the data. What do we need? What do people want? So that's super exciting. But did you guys fully from the beginning have the intention of having your own site, or is this something that's just sort of emerged organically?
It definitely emerged. We didn't think about this because I think we're quite aware of how much work it is and how much just how much energy goes into building it. So, I mean, since we have, to be honest, like, they did the heavy lifting. We're not, we didn't build a software, we didn't do anything on a technical side. So it's more that we can use the existing, especially the player pool. That's the hardest part, right? Building a player pool from scratch is so much more difficult than jumping on top of on the existing bandwagon. So our idea is more like, how can we have a positive impact on an ecosystem, on an existing environment, and be this connecting piece, or this middleman as well, to, on the one side, we have a direct connection to the players and understand the players very well, and on the other side, we have a direct connection to the management and the owners of GGPoker, so we can communicate with them. Like, I'm basically now, we're chatting constantly back and forth about, things that don't go so well. How can we improve them? How can we bring solutions? Like, what are issues? Because there's constantly things coming up, obviously, with so many players playing, and I want to address them and then look how we can improve them.
Wow. I mean, honestly, I think for most people, when we were talking about the concept or the idea of a training site that was started by, or at least co-founded by you, people were extremely, extremely excited. And I also always get the question, where should people go to learn poker? And I think what's so interesting is that what most poker players will tell you is that the best and most important aspect of learning and growing your game is building your community, is making those friendships. And so would you describe Poker Code in its evolution now as a place where people can develop these friendships and sort of foster those essential relationships?
Oh, for sure. I think it's a matter of your mindset and your openness. If you're really willing, I think we are a place that really fostered that. And it really depends on your willingness. And some players don't like it that much. Some just rather prefer to learn by themselves, or have their own way of learning. And some really thrive in that way. I'm more a person that thrives in interaction with others. I really prefer talking to others and bouncing ideas back and forth and discussing different topics. I just feel it gives it such a deeper perspective, and it's multidimensional, and there's so many different views on things. If you enjoy that and if you learn that way, I think I think we're a really good place for that, because we're very responsive to that. So if you invest and you dig deeper, like, we're there and ready to go.
So let's talk a little bit about the relationship then with GG. We had I did a Q&A with Elke last week, and he actually explained some things about the client itself and clearly how much they've worked on the software, but the staking platform which exists within the client. And definitely there's some things that you can tell this was designed with poker players in mind and exactly what they're looking for. Now, when you see the ambassadors that they've brought on board, you, Daniel, Elke, it's definitely, the sort of cream of the crop, I would say. But then you are in a unique position with Poker Code, then having a relationship with GG, I guess, in another way. You're in bed with them, I guess, in another avenue. So let's talk a little bit about your relationship with GG and why this partnership, both personally and with Poker Code.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the synergies are just very clear. So I think over the last 1 or 2, especially the last 3 years, I wasn't really sure about how I fit in there. I wasn't really willing to travel or play full time anymore and travel all the time. And online, the environment was really kind of dying, actually. Like, wasn't really games anymore. And GG was small. Like 2 years ago, GG didn't really get the same player pool that it has today. And so I kind of saw a dire future for online poker, and I'm pretty enthusiastic actually about what's happening now, like the environment as a whole, but then also about GGPoker and our collaboration, because there's something about, I think a really relevant part is the incentive of people involved. And for example, to give some credit where it's due, I think like what Phil Gelfand is doing, I think is incredible and very honorable. And I have lots of respect for Phil and just everything he does, basically. But not everyone has that incentive. It's like, let's actually, let's listen to all the people, and let's make the most sense of this, and let's look for the optimal solutions or the best possible solutions. But then also the thrive and the energy and the resources to actually pull that through and make it happen. And so I've been talking to the people at GG quite a lot now, and it's very refreshing how they perceive the game. And some things that at first sight for me didn't really make much sense, I'm also learning a lot new things now. I'm getting to know the economy better, and I'm understanding the ecosystem better and how different things interact. And a lot of things were had as a pro, as someone who has been making money with the game, and I have my preconceived perspective and preconceived notion about how things should be and what's fair and what's not fair. And then the deeper I look into it, I'm understanding it's like, oh wow, there's a lot more to it. It's a lot more complicated than like any of these topics. If it's rake or how it's spent, or promotions, or security, or customer support, or the software itself, or the offer, or the games, like all these topics, it's easy to take a stance of just being very simple about it, being very binary and very radical and extremes, like this is bad, this is good. It's more complicated to constantly improve the system and really try to get to a point where it's combining all these different perspectives, and it's constantly trying to iterate and improve it. And I'm very excited about this collaboration, because what I experience as very positive is their speed of iteration as well, and their openness to listen and discuss topics. Like, there has not been a topic where we weren't able to openly discuss all different perspectives. And then if we agree on something, it's immediately implemented. And then there's also things where we disagree, but at least there's an open discussion and communication about it. And I think that's very, very important. At least for me, that's a very important part. That there's going to be mistakes. There are going to be things that don't work. But we and I want to communicate it openly and be transparent about that process.
I'm super curious Fedor, about we're in such an interesting spot just in the world as a whole, but I think poker is in a really interesting spot. And even at PokerNews, we've seen, signups and traffic in ways that we haven't seen in years and years. So I do think specifically right now, but really just for the future of poker, what are some of the things that you're seeing and some of the ways that you feel hopeful now about the poker economy?
I think what we should focus more on is the experience of individuals. I think this is at the core of the game, is that as many people have as much of an enjoyable experience as possible, and it's different for every individual, right? Like there's pros who mostly are interested in making money of it, obviously also play for the competition maybe, and there's lots of factors that go into it. But then the big bunch of players maybe play for fun, or play it on the side, play it as a hobby, play it with their friends, and so on. So I think we have to look at a variety of different people and their incentives. And if you do that, it becomes a lot more difficult um, to make a choice, right? Because it's like, now if you look at one group, it's really easy. It's like, okay, this whole group wants this one thing, but then you have 5 other groups and they all want different things, or they're interested in different things. And now um, how do you make choices in that regard? And I think what is a big issue in the environment is that oftentimes choices have been made on the basis of how can we make the most money, and not on the base of how can we create the most enjoyable experience. And I really truly believe that you will be financially profitable if you create a great environment for people to have fun and enjoy the game. And that's also what I'm going to be looking for and advocating for, is to bring in my perspective and share my view on where I think we can improve that and how we can optimize that, and bring in all these other perspectives, because now obviously I'm in more I get more feedback, and I'm in more conversation with players as well that they don't have the same perspective as I. They're not playing high stakes, or they aren't professionals, and now that's a totally different, brings in a totally different view. And I think a lot of pros would be surprised, because I believe we live in that kind of bubble where we are pros, or we play on this level, and then the people we talk to share that view, and they're also pros and they also play on that level. And then you hear the same opinion 15 times, but you forget about, or sometimes forget about, the opinion of the other 50,000 people who maybe aren't and don't play on that level. And I think that's really important to take that into consideration. And I think a lot of what GG is doing is catering to that, is not catering to the 1 or 5% professionals, but catering to the 99% who play for fun, and that will upset some people because they have certain expectations. And I think now it's about finding the balance, like how can we optimize that? Because obviously it's great if everyone is happy and everyone's having fun, but then it's also about making choices. And I think they've been doing a good job in some things, and I think they can improve in some other things. And I'm excited to help them with that.
Well, tell me a little bit about, Fedor personally at this point. So you sort of famously said, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on traveling the circuit all the time and, going to every tournament and being everywhere. And let's talk a little bit about, you've got your hand in a lot of projects. What is the balance of your life at this point? How much of a role is poker playing in your life? What are your days looking like, both pre and now in quarantine?
Very different. So I would say, as a quick sum up, after poker, the biggest change has been that I was kind of on reset button. So I was okay. I don't want to play full time. I was like 3.5 years ago after the summer, and as you said, put a foot on the brakes and just like, okay, let me take a look at that. And I think what happened then is I started a lot of things and committed to a lot of things and took on a lot of responsibility. And I wasn't realizing how much this can compound over time. So it's basically, let's say I took on, 5 different responsibilities, and then at this point it was manageable, and I was like, okay, 5 different things, I can manage that. At this point I can also manage it if it grows a little bit. But then let's say 2 of them become a little less, and then 3 of them grow somewhat exponentially, and then suddenly I'm at a point where I'm like, oh wow, I can't even fulfill one, or I feel challenged by one of them, but I can't ever handle 3 of them. And this was kind of the thing that happened over the last 4 years. Is like, I invested in a lot of companies, I started companies, um, I was still traveling, I was just in all these different areas, and I've realized, hey, wow, this is too much. Like I can't I can't commit, or I committed to things that I can't fulfill right now, and I need to set this straight. And that's basically what I've been focusing on the last 1.5 years, is communicating that and finding solutions to manage that. So not investing in more things, trying to get out of things, clearly saying, like, setting time horizons of reducing the time I spend in different things. And so it's kind of now I'm removing a lot of things, and what's left is it's becoming more simple. So this quarantine was kind of a very extreme speed up of what I've been doing before. I was like, now I was at home, so I didn't travel. And my main project, building the space that you mentioned, is kind of on hold right now. So now I just had all this time in my hands. And the 2 other projects that I spent my most time on, besides the community space, is Poker Code. So I've been spending more time there, working out the collaboration with GG, and the other one is actually a fashion studio here in Vienna. So I've been spending more time there. I started learning how to sew and created some pieces myself, and this was kind of a nice side thing to get out of the house and actually physically do something. I think that helped me a lot stay sane. Um, and then kind of I started playing poker again, and games have been big, and I actually had a lot of fun in this combination of, with the synergies of all these things. So I can play, and there's, we have this community in the back, so people are railing me, and we communicate about it, we post about hands, I'm talking more strategy with my friends again, and so things kind of fell into place for it to just be a lot more fun and more enjoyable for me again. And so I've been playing about 3-4 days a week now, and that's, I can tell, my limit already. So yeah, this is kind of how my schedule looked like. It's kind of daylight business, having phone calls, and going outside, being in the fashion studio, and then at night I play. It's kind of like the Batman cycle.
I was wondering, even when you said, okay, I'll be free on Friday evening, I was thinking, oh, most poker players are just going to be like, scoops going on, I'm not available ever, I'm just going to degen and play every tournament I can. And yet I see that you're doing really well in Scoop, also what the things that you are playing. So clearly what you're doing is working. But that is something I wanted to ask you about, because I think at the level, of play that you are at, most players would say that pulling away from the game even a little bit, or even having one other side project, is just not enough to stay so sharp and be at the very best level. And yet you just took second in like a high roller a few days ago. Clearly you're still able to manage at that level. And do you think that that's partially because of what you mentioned before a little bit about this intuitive play style, and just this ability to sort of shift in whatever game you're in?
I think it gives me an advantage in the sense of, I'm probably a bit sharper after taking long breaks, because it's less about distinct memory and more about abstraction and vague memory. So I'm not remembering, like, even back then I never really memorized specific solutions, but rather just try to learn how to find logics that I can apply to any situation. And these logics I still remember. So it's more freezing my game rather than actually declining a lot. But the biggest thing is obviously other players are getting better. Is I could very clearly tell that. I mean, you have to. It's literally similar to that where I'm playing, now in 2020, and this when I started playing, I was probably at a similar level than when how I played in 2017. And in 2017, that was probably pretty good. But now in 2020, people had 3.5 years time to study and get better and learn new things, and that's big. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of new things you can pick up and learn and improve and get better. And that's really the biggest thing that I can tell is I probably got slightly worse in the beginning, and then I think given all the things that are out there, like now I'm catching up because these people that are better, I can bounce back and forth ideas with them and I can improve. And then I think now I'm at a better level than I was before. So that's a good progress. And then on the other hand, obviously there's just more players that pass me and that are better than me.
Still humble, guys. No big deal. Well, speaking of sort of when you very first came into the game, I was wanting to ask you because I think the very first interview that I ever did with you, you had just come back from South America and you had donated, I think you gave away a lot of money that you'd made online and you were helping to build houses, and you expressed even then at such a young age how important it was for you felt like to give back. And I think that's something that's very clearly been seen throughout your career, if you will. And so I wanted to sort of get your take now as you've continued to mature and grow on how you yourself are wanting to give back, and what are some of the ways that you perceive as effective ways to sort of contribute to the world as a whole.
I really truly believe in that we as individuals do better if the system does better. So that the best for all of us is the best for each part of all of it. So if everyone's doing well, you're doing better. That's what I believe in, and I can see that oftentimes, and I experience that oftentimes. Is I think that's the best way for it to be and to understand is if I don't think selflessness per se exists. I think people do things for others because it makes them feel good or it helps them, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's great. I think it's a level of consciousness to not differentiate between me and you anymore, but it's more like it's all interactive and it's all connected in some way. It's maybe not really visible, not describable, or not rationally. I can't write it down, I can't quantify it, but it exists in my belief at least. And so that's why if I look at something like money, and if I realize like, hey, if I limit it to my universe and me, I don't really gain so much from having X amount of money more. If I have 1 million more, like it's not really affecting. Like even now in quarantine, I could tell, it's like the basic of what makes me happy or what I need is, a place to stay at, good food, that I freedom to go outside, like, and a good social surrounding. And it's like this way I could live without even thinking about anything much further. And if I think about that, then it's like, okay, wait a second, but it doesn't work like this. It's not only me, but if I give that money to some other purpose, then this might be even more valuable than keeping it and just like for some future potential risk or my own safety or whatever. And so that is one of the main reasons why I do that or why I care about that, because I think it's better.
I mean, it makes sense. I think it definitely makes sense. And I think it colors and shapes a lot of the things that you do and are involved in. It's very clear. And speaking along those lines, the last time we spoke also, you had mentioned sort of your realization about the importance of food. That's also something that you just touched on. And I think that's also something that, especially now, um, for example, we're seeing a lot of people turning to gardening. I think a lot of people are, even in the United States, for example, there's been a lot of issues in the meat packing plants and things like this. I think this, one interesting side effect of the quarantine is that people are gaining a lot more awareness about their food, where it comes from, the process of getting it, how it even gets to the stores. And since you're working on building a restaurant, or that seemed to be one of the big things coming from this collaboration that you're doing and building, what are some of the fundamentals and some of the things about that restaurant that are so essential and inspiring to you?
I have to start there. It's not my, I'm super passionate about the topic, but I'm not the person driving it. So it's an amazing person. His name is Jacob. He's also a friend of mine, and he comes from he has a background in food. He worked in a Michelin star restaurant and worked in some other restaurant as well, but his background as a food stylist, was just really, really awesome chef. Like amazing. Like he he's one of these people where you give him 3 potatoes and he makes, a 3-course, absolutely amazing meal. And basically the idea is to not so much with a goal or like this is, oh, we want to reach this. It's more like, hey, how would we approach this? If we would look at the whole cycle, how would we do it? And there are a lot of things of like, oh, wait a second, how we would do it is so different to how almost everyone else does it. Is we, for example, would only take food from people we know, and it's like people we work with. So everyone we work with here is regional and is local, and we know how it's made and we know where it comes from, and we know the people personally, and it's all seasonal because we believe that it's just more sustainable, healthier. So this whole cycle, we want to know, like literally from the start of it, how they treat it and how they think and what their values and perceptions are, till the point of how do we treat it. Then we do a lot of sprouting and miso and lots of, with different cultures and hundreds of different things. We just started, actually, we have a little shop actually now that we opened through the quarantine, where we get the vegetables and products from the farmers, and then we sell it in our shop, and people can pre-order, and then we basically put the basket outside and you can pick it up. So we did that. We just kind of did our mini garden project, launched that. We put in the seeds like 2 weeks ago or 1.5 weeks ago. So we have that. We have a little garden as well, and this is basically just how we would do it. Is like get the food from the farmers. He would produce it and just make some amazing meals without much of a menu, without just like what's there. Make some great food and create an experience that is not typical, but that we care about.
I love that. And I hope to see this shift on a much bigger scale. I hope that's what's happening. And I know you have things to do in your whole life, but you did mention that you have been making some pieces and that you're also invested in the fashion, which is so funny because in some ways I can see how that's connected to living this more sort of sustainable, organic life, right? Is understanding your own clothing and how you clothe yourself. But then on the other side, you can look at the fashion industry as this often sort of toxic, terrible part of this consumer element of the world. So talk to me a little bit about this fashion project and how you see it as a part of your, worldview as a whole.
So there's one really simple base to it, and that's I just really enjoy the creative process of it. It's just super fun how you design this whole thing. You have this living thing that you design something for, and there's so many elements about the the material and how you go about this whole thing. You know, if you change 1 centimeter here, then the arm falls a bit lower, and every body type is different. Every person is different. So this whole creative process of you have an idea of something that you would like to create, and then I see that more as art. You know, you have this image in your mind and you try out different things and you do something, and that's the essential, or one essential thing for me. And then on a more societal level, it's fucked up. It's really fucked up. It's this whole thing of and I don't mean it in a blaming way. It's more like, wait, I observe and I'm like, wait a second, this is silly. Like, this is really, really silly. We pay, you know, hundreds of euros for clothes and have way too much, and it doesn't make sense to me. That, like, I looked at it, and the deeper I looked, I was like, wait a second, all this, this doesn't make sense. It's not. I can go there, and I literally learned how to make a hoodie in a day. And I'm not the craftiest person. I'm okay. And you can buy fabric in a store here for 10 euros, let's say 15. And you can come and you can sit on there and you can make your own piece in half a day. You could make your own, you know, you could buy all whatever you like and you can just make it. Obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that because you need the pattern, you need the design. Obviously, this has been pre-done, so we've done that already. We have the pattern, so you just have to cut it out. But in essence, if you put in your time, you know, and it's something super cool to learn. It's just you can make your own shirts and your own pullover, and it's I really enjoy that activity and this thing of like, hey, I'm wearing something I've done, and it's not terrible, and I'm just thinking of like how cool would it be if we could all do that, you know, like you could just make your own stuff, and because it's so cheap and it's so easy to make and it's a lot of fun to make, and we don't need to buy, you know, $15 shirts from H&M or and they buy fabric in wherever, and then they ship it to Vietnam, and then they make it in Vietnam, and then they ship it back, and it's just like, whoa, this is crazy. And then obviously the next level of you buy, you know, Balenciaga for 1,000 euros, and it's the same 10 euro fabric, and for them, because they buy hundred thousands of meters, it's like 2 euros, and then they have someone producing this in 5 minutes in a mass production somewhere in Pakistan or Bangladesh or Portugal or wherever. So I look at this and you're like, okay, wait a second. You produced this for 5 euros. You stole you squeezed a little designer for this design and you sell it for 1,000 euros. And I'm like, I can't. Like, the moment I started digging deeper into that and understanding the producers and the fabrics and how it works and so on, I was like, oh, there is no quality difference. Like, the quality of this fabric is that there's almost nothing better about that. And so I've been rambling a bit now about this topic, but like it's something that was one thing that I've experienced for myself. It was like, hey, okay, this could be cool to show an alternative in.
It's not rambling. The people want to know what you are busy with, what's going on in there. And I do think it's so interesting because I was just reading something last night, and they were basically saying, you know, if you told like our ancient ancestors that our problem wouldn't be getting food, it would be that we are obese, right? That our ancient ancestors would be like, what's obese? And we would tell them, you know, it's like, we're overweight, we have too much food. And they'd be like, yeah, we want to be obese. That sounds great. Like, the problems that we have because of the direction that the world has gone and because of the way that our lives have moved, our lives have become infinitely easier in some ways, but also infinitely harder in other ways. And I do think I can really see, especially now as people are having more time, I know several people who have started experimenting with making their own clothing, and especially because people don't know where it came from and don't want I think people are understanding fast fashion now and are worried about the, you know, people in Bangladesh who are making the clothing. But also, I know so many people who have started microgreens little mini gardens in their homes. And I do feel like in some ways, as far as we've gone in one direction, feels like there's some sort of a pull now, to go back a little bit, to know the things you eat, to know the things you wear, to even the things. I know people who now are experimenting with making soap and just all the things. Just, it really feels like there's a shift in consciousness, and that maybe, as horrific as this whole experience has been with this disease, especially, that being home more and being more connected to understanding our food and our clothing and things like that is giving people the space and time to experiment more with that, maybe.
One of the biggest changes for me personally has actually been the connection to the thing itself. So when I eat food, for example, I used to throw away a lot more food earlier. That's one big change, is I appreciate, and like the whole experience, I appreciate it more. I'm more careful with it. I taste more of it in general. I'm just more aware of it. And the same is true actually for my clothing now, where I'm thinking more about how I can fix it rather than giving it away or throwing it away. It's just like I can just take it, I can fix it, and like even be creative a little bit, make it my own, and if there's a hole, I just put something else over it and make it my style. And that's a level of also putting in the time. That's if you made a piece and you took 5 hours to make it, I treat it a lot different. I'm a lot more cherishing that I have it, and also appreciative of it, and I'm more careful with it. So that changed a lot of positive things for me, to just be more involved in what I'm doing.
That makes so much sense. I can totally relate to, versus the idea of, oh, this thing was $10 and who cares, and throw it away and get another one. When you are really invested in it, then it changes the whole value.
And it's something totally new for me. I would say there's almost no point in my life where I learned that or experienced that, or it was this whole thing of like really from start to finish doing these simple things. I'm missing a lot of connections because of that. It's really like there's such a big difference of any example of if it's food, like seeing how pigs or cow grow up, and how they're being killed, and how they're being butchered, and like how they come to you, and then eating it or killing it yourself, and then cutting. These are things where my whole perspective on this whole thing changed immediately. It's when I've never heard about, or then I go there and then I see, it was like, wait a second, that's how they die, like that's what happens. I'm like, that's not so much from like, oh, I'm ethically punishing people now, or blaming them if they eat it. It's more like, oh, wait a second, for me now, I wasn't aware of this, something changed. I was like, I don't really care so much about it. I actually don't really like it that much. And if that's the case, then I don't really need it, and don't want it. And these are a lot of things where I didn't change my mind because of social pressure or kind of an agenda, but more of like, hey, wow, I experienced it, and then I created my own, or came up with my own logic. I was like, why should I buy I did buy expensive clothes. I have some designer clothes. Like I don't want to go out there and blame anyone who does it. It's more like for me did it, and then I saw the opposite, and I was like, wait, I can do something cooler that's more fun and better quality, and it's mine. And then the purpose of this whole other thing just vanishes, basically.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. All right, well, I know you have to move on with your life. You have lots of things on your plate and lots of things going on. But for those who are listening, and for anyone who doesn't already follow you or follow Gigi, where can they find you? Where do they, tap into the life of Fedor?
Yeah, so as a little shout out, so we're building Poker Code with GG right now. So if you want to sign up, you can go to pokercode.com/play. If you want to learn more about poker, pokercode.com. And yeah, just join our community and like check it out. See if you like it. I think for a lot of you who want to improve at the game or want to play on GG, the games are really good. I think the software is fun. Just test it out. And besides that, if you want to stay up to date, just follow me on Instagram. It's my name, Fedor Holz, or on Twitter @ChronoGuy. I think these are the main channels where you can find more about me. I'm gonna post my journey throughout the next 2 weeks craziness where there's 100 million guaranteed on GG, just like games every day, really soft games as well. So yeah, would be really awesome if you support or join us on that path.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see the journey of the next 2 weeks. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you everybody out there also for joining us on this little mini journey with the one and only Fedor Holz.
Thank you, Sarah.